Okay, so if you're not familiar, Tesla has an event coming up on August 8th where they're going to unveil the Tesla robotaxi, which is supposed to be some form of driverless vehicle, driverless network. Nobody really knows what it's going to be. But I'm growing increasingly confident that Tesla has everything it needs within its disposal to destroy companies like Uber and Lyft. And what I always hear is like, hey, Uber and Lyft, they're going to be fine. Tesla doesn't even have a driverless network yet. They don't even have a freaking true driverless car where people don't have to pay attention. But I really think that's not the right question. The question isn't when will driverless be here for Tesla. I think the right question is how quickly can Tesla leverage its advantages so that it can displace Uber and Lyft and it becomes a de facto app for people to use to hail a car. Now, the three advantages that I think Tesla has from this perspective are software, scale, and the app. Software is a technology they're using for their driverless cars. They're using 8 cameras and an AI brain of sorts at the headquarters and in the car, where the cost of that specific technology is significantly cheaper than a competing Waymo or anyone else, to the point that Tesla has been able to sell its cars with that technology in the car already for 8 years and still make a profit. That same hardware is going to power the software that Tesla thinks can get it to self-driving performance. From a scale perspective, Tesla is the only automaker, the only EV maker that's making millions of units per year outside of China. Their closest competitor is BYD, but everybody else is far behind. So they're really the only ones, as long as this self-driving technology works, where they can manufacture millions of units per year. And third, it's the app. They have an app that people can download that they can very easily leverage to say, hey, go to the Tesla app to hail a car. But the question becomes how? How can Tesla do this? How can Tesla get people to go on their app to hail a self-driving car or even any car? Matt Smith, one of the most brilliant people you'll ever meet, those who follow the channel know how unusual it is for me to say that. He said on X, I think Tesla will launch the Tesla network in at least a few geographies on 8/8. This will be with drivers for now, and it will help to collect better data and gain network effects for an eventual autonomous version of the same. Doesn't make any sense, right? Initially, you think about it as like, hey, they're trying to build a self-driving car, a self-driving network. Why would they have people in the cars? And then I read this post from Gary Black, who I respect tremendously. Him and I are good buddies, but we disagree on a lot of things. Those thinking Tesla can just offer a supervised with drivers ride-hailing service to compete with Uber and Lyft until unsupervised ride-hailing becomes available are daydreaming. I get why it's good for Tesla to set up a Tesla network and start collecting data and gain network effects, but if not cheaper, what's the consumer proposition? And here's where it finally, I had a light bulb moment, thanks to Matt and Gary, that really highlights just how far ahead I think Tesla is when it comes to executing on this goal of displacing Uber Lyft, of becoming the de facto company that people use to hail a car, be it with a driver or driverless. The really important thing here is that Tesla doesn't need to make a profit to start on this driverless network or drivable network, whatever it is. And the reason is specifically because the network effects and the data that we'll get from this experiment, let's say, or from this business case is significantly more valuable, I think, than making a profit on a small network of people that can drive cars. The only thing they have to do, in my opinion, the only thing they have to do, hail a Tesla for 30% less than Uber. We all know how expensive Uber and Lyft are now. It's a phenomenal service. I use it, but it is expensive. And it's because we have to pay the drivers. They rightfully deserve to be compensated for the time and effort. But it is very, very expensive. It's upwards of $2 per mile, if not more. And since Tesla is aiming to become a network of driverless vehicles, the biggest benefit of a driverless network is that they don't have the driver. And the driver is by far the largest percentage of cost for a car or some sort of taxi network. If you remove that cost, then all of a sudden you have all these costs and profits open up for your driverless network that you never had before. And with that same sentence, they can very easily say drivers will earn the same as Uber and will get access to free FSD as a way to incentivize people, those drivers, if they don't already have a Tesla or if they do have a Tesla, to start using their network. If we look at some of the stats from Uber, the average Uber ride is about $1.80 and the driver cut, so what the driver takes home is about $1.29. And the difference between how much Uber charges you or I to hail a car on their platform and how much a driver earns from that platform is that 30% that Uber takes. And so again, by offering 30% off from the get-go, 100% of the revenue goes to the driver. As long as Tesla decides not to make profit on this, the driver can still make exactly the same amount they would on the Tesla app versus the Uber app. And all of a sudden, Tesla has this marketing push to get people to download the app on their phones. In addition, I don't know if you're aware, but the CEO of Tesla also owns this little known platform called X, what used to be Twitter. I wonder if there's any way for them to maybe put a button on the platform where you can hail a Tesla. I don't know. There's like, what, 600 million people that have the app? Seems like that can be a thing. And again, this is on the premise that Tesla is already profitable. This is a big advantage for the company. In the case of Uber and Lyft, the only way they can make money is by taking a cut from the driver pay. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that these cars have already been purchased by customers, right? These are Tesla cars. So Tesla has already sold the car and will potentially make revenue on FSD and the insurance they offer on that car if it so chooses, which again goes back to the point that the company is already profitable. And so when we think through it, I think it makes a ton of sense for Tesla to do something like this. And it really jeopardizes Uber and Lyft because you're already creating this sort of warning shot that says, hey, I'm coming for you. I know that a driverless vehicle is going to be much cheaper to run than an Uber or Lyft because you require a driver. And for me to get my app in people's phones or my app out there for people to use, I can just say, hey, here's the discount, come on my network. By the way, drivers that are on my network get paid the same exact as they would on Uber or Lyft. You get to drive the Tesla. A bunch of people download my app because who doesn't want to save 30% on their ride? And then while everybody downloads that app and more people use the network, more and more drivers come to the network, Tesla gets more and more data, so on and so forth. This flywheel starts. And then once they have everything in place, you say, okay, cool. Now we're going to start offering unsupervised rides. We're going to give you the ability to hail a cybercab or whatever they're going to unveil on 8.8, this driverless car where you don't even have to hail a driver. The car will come to you. You have privacy, and maybe they'll offer it for the same exact price, or maybe they'll offer it even cheaper than a 30% off of Uber and Lyft. And all of this not only becomes possible because the company is already profitable, but they're also the only company that has generalized self-driving at scale. Without that technology that they have at their disposal, that they're very confident they'll be able to finish, they would not be able to offer this solution. It would be dead. No business can exist where they don't make profit. But they have this window of opportunity here, I believe, where they can exercise their muscle and really exercise their advantages they have versus everybody else and get this thing out of the gate, get the app downloaded on people's phones, get the data going, and all of a sudden Uber or Lyft are going to be looking around like, what the hell just happened? How do Uber and Lyft survive? How do they survive in that world? And so the alternative I hear is like, well, Tesla should partner with Uber so that they can get the network effects. And then my pushback to that would be, why would Tesla introduce another cost on top of driverless network where Uber has to make money, right? Uber can't not make money. They have to make money. Why introduce another variable, pay them money, right? And then the rider, you or I, will end up paying Uber just for the app. That doesn't make any sense to me, especially when Tesla can say 30% off every single ride versus Uber and Lyft because we can. Because we know we're going to have driverless vehicles. We know that when you hail a Tesla and say 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, you don't have to worry about a driver anymore. And so we're going to be able to make a bunch of money. We're going to save you a bunch of money. And anyone who adds their car to the network that has a Tesla, they're going to make a bunch of money. But ultimately, this all hinges on massive execution. Tesla still has to be able to solve for self-driving. Tesla still has to get to this point where they can offer a self-driving car. But if you follow the data, you follow the trend, in my opinion, I think it's quite obvious that it's coming. It's one of those technologies where, you don't need a use case to say, oh, I wonder if self-driving cars will work. They will obviously work. People will obviously hail a ride that is 30%, 40%, who knows, maybe even 50% cheaper than an Uber today, where they don't have to worry about getting into a crash because it's super safe. It's private because you're the only one in the car. You don't need a driver. It's comfortable. It has a giant screen. It has a 6 sound system. All the seats are aired and cooled. Oh, and by the way, it's way cheaper, right? Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? It's one of those very few business cases that doesn't really need a business plan. It's just all about execution. You just have to make the technology work. Just today, Waymo announced that they're opening up their service to the entire San Francisco area where anybody can hail a driverless car from Waymo. And that's super freaking exciting. The one weakness that Waymo has, in my opinion, though, is that their scale is very, very difficult because their cars are very expensive. They use a bunch of different sensors and they use a completely different approach where they have to map the entire city. Whereas Tesla has the opportunity to really leverage its much lower costs and its scale to displace even companies like Waymo long term, because who would want to pay for a much more expensive driverless car that potentially costs $200,000, $250,000 to make versus a robotaxi or cybercab that potentially costs $25,000 to make. But I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, links in the description below, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.